When you first invested in crypto, what did your
Yeah.
parents tell you?
I didn't really tell them. But they were, I think, a bit confused because like they were, usual, very proud Asian dad and mom were like, oh, my dad, my son went to this school, my son's working. Do you know Amazon? He's working at Amazon. you know.
Hey friends, welcome to Smart Venture Podcast, the best information for future CEOs. Starting a company is easy, but growing and managing it is hard. In this podcast, we sit down with the best founders, experienced leaders, and investors in tech and relevant space to give you the best tips to grow your company and grow yourself. Some of our most popular episodes are about crypto founders and investors. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe and give it a 5-star. If you have a business, you need a website. What's the best way to get a website up and running? By choosing a company that makes it simple, like Pair Networks. Pair has over 20 years of experiences managing the entire digital ecosystem for thousands of online businesses all around the world. Pair makes it really easy for you with do-it-yourself website building tools and features, including simple drag and drop page design. And they have guaranteed US-based support technicians ready to help you whenever you need it, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Right now, when you sign up with Pair Networks, you will receive 1 free month of web hosting. See for yourself how easy it is to build your website for free. That's pair.com/grace to get started today. Hi, Baek. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hi, Grace. Thank you for having me.
So I heard great things from friends about Hashed, and you're introduced by one of my mentors. And first of all, like you guys are having some really huge success in the crypto space. And to start the show, I would love to learn a little bit more about yourself and how you got into crypto. You've worked at Amazon and you have really deep tech background. You started your own company before joining Amazon and you went to CMU. And tell me more about, how you entered the space of crypto.
I was born and raised in Japan and, moved to US in high school. Always been interested in engineering as my dad was an automotive engineer. So I just love doing things hands-on. And I think that's what led to, going to CMU for robotics and ECE to, work on more, hands-on deep tech and, work on various projects with the team of, software design, hardware, mechatronics and all that. I met a mentor, like he said, in sophomore year where, he was super into startup space. And, I was initially thinking about going into more of a PhD route into robotics to, continue the research. But, I just fell in the rabbit hole of, how the startup ecosystem works and, why these founders are so passionate about their ideas and, why they're, building with these friends. And I think that's what really, got me, started in terms of exploring the space and tech space and engineering. And, I did several, different trials of startups. And, my junior year when I was done with undergrad, I started working on the idea with a couple of my friends. So that was on like kind of robotics, IoT, last mile logistics idea, and it didn't go so well, but they really allowed me to, learn more about the startup ecosystem and, founders in the space, and also, very helpful investors that, guide me along the way. But after that got folded, I decided to, continue my career as an engineer at Amazon, just to learn more about, how do I scale these engineering teams and in product. So I was working in their AWS cloud IoT business, and there I started working on, these kind of Web2 internet layer like MQTT, HTTP, like SSL signatures, a lot of these, legacy internet, protocols that, we were doing a lot of optimization for edge computing or like robotic devices to have better connectivity with the cloud. And I started feeling that it's a little less interesting in that there's not much creativity involved or not much you can do in the, this existing legacy system of internet. And, I stumbled upon blockchain again. And, now that I'm more, I guess, knowledgeable about what internet is in the back end, blockchain came up to me more interesting in that this is a new way to really coordinate different, identities and participants with the game theory of different incentives. So I started digging in with my roommate at the time in Seattle. He was working in Microsoft, I was working Amazon. After work, we were, just studying every day, going to UW campus at the library, reading through white papers, and we just fell deeper and deeper. And I was fortunate to have, another mentor that I got to connect through, my startup experience. And, these guys are now, partners at Hash, where, they were really early in Ethereum and early in, this early founder network of, blockchain ecosystem. At the time, I was studying a lot, but I didn't really know beyond white paper. Like I didn't really know who are these people, why they're doing this, what kind of people are moving in. But I think these guys really allowed me to meet these people and go to conference together, do due diligence together, and we decided that hey, maybe we should this really make this into a fund structure where we can scale our impact and systemically support our funders. So that's how Hash started, and we started with 700K in capital. We didn't raise the fund, so it's still 100% GP fund in our crypto vehicle. And we started by incubating Terra Money in 2017 with Do and Dan, and in 2018 we met X Infinity guys in Ho Chi Minh, where we brought them into our, at the time, gaming accelerator program called Hash Labs to onboard as a first advisor, and then invest as a first check into their seed round, and so on. So that's how we kind of started in the space.
Can I ask a really stupid question? Why is the font called hashed?
Yeah, I guess hashing is really the key part of cryptography that allows blockchains to happen, because what we mean by mining blockchain is really solving that hash. And we thought hash would be quite a cool and simple way to identify us as a crypto platform. And the reason that we don't say hash capital or like hash venture is that none of our GPs or like even early members of our hash don't come from VC or finance. We are all ex-founders, all engineers. We just love working with the founders, and we see Hash as more of a platform where we have a venture. Now we have a game and metaverse studio, and then now we are running also the custody business. So it's been quite cool to see, how we can, increase our impact through many different hands-on work rather than just being a VC.
I'm curious, so as you mentioned, everybody from your fund are essentially our founder themselves. And I really love that type of culture. And I'm curious, when it comes to building an investor network or building a founder network, what are some actions that you take to establish the expertise in the space, as well as making people comfortable enough to share with you about their struggles in terms of founders?
Yeah, I think it's really about being really the friend rather than as an investor. Because I think in the crypto industry, especially, the boundary of builder, user, and investor is very vague, right? Because everyone is doing that three role, I think. Because like you're a founder, but you're still angel investing a lot, but you're also user of other protocol. Like I'm an investor, but we were building a lot of different games, and I'm also user of a lot of DeFi protocol. So I think a lot of people really shared similar experience, but contributing in different way to the ecosystem. And I believe we are serving certain purpose within the ecosystem to grow these founders in a most effective and strategic ways. And I think that's been the best part, where we become friends. And I think as an investor that's been investing in the space for past 5 years, we were very fortunate enough to work with really early founders that pioneered some of the new ecosystem that happened in the industry. For Terra's case, they really pioneered the decentralized money, fully decentralized stablecoin. Now it's the biggest decentralized stablecoin in terms of market cap and usage, and that allowed for explosion of these different DeFi and fintech neobank type of application building on top. For X's case, we were working with them before play to earn became a term, and it was before like SLP token existed. So it was more about how do we understand the cultural backgrounds of Vietnam and Philippines, and how does this token model and this incentive game theory works in these regions, and why they'd be helpful. So I think having that kind of context and working closely with them in more of a daily, weekly basis really helped us to build that trust and relationship, and that led to broader ecosystem that they created, which led to another investments.
For sure. I'm curious, when it comes to, Xfinity or Terra, they're
very obviously really huge crypto company now, and it's heard by like everybody. It's recognizable brand. But when it was in its early stage, what are some characteristics that you guys kind of see before everybody else?
Yeah, story of the two was quite fun because for Terra's case, kind of like you, I was always interested in talking to the founders since college days. So I used to work as a kind of like a side job as like a tech writer
Mhm.
for covering Asian startups in English because I noticed that in 2015 around like 16, there wasn't much of a coverage in US media about early stage startups happening in Asia. Obviously, we hear about all these like billion plus companies, but I was more interested in the kind of what's happening in the front. And I started looking around, and obviously as a robotic student, I was always interested in kind of more deep tech solutions. And I was looking for different firms to interview and came across this IoT mesh network startup called Anyfy. And I reached out on Facebook as a cold message, and the founder replied, and it was Do Kwan. So he was working on that idea right after Stanford, as almost now it kind of now that I understand blockchain, it was also kind of like network where you use this mesh network to relay different Wi-Fi so that you can participate and also help out others in a decentralized way. But it didn't have like a token, but it had like a centralized like a mileage like a points. I found it really fascinating. Wrote a piece about it and then stayed in touch. And I ended up joining Hash to kick off investments in the crypto space. Do was working with Dan, who was the founder of Tmart, which is one of the biggest e-commerce startup in Korea. And they were ideating about creating this decentralized money for e-commerce. And we thought this is quite interesting in that unless we have decentralized money, nothing that gets built on top of it is really decentralized because you're really banking on the dependency of the bank. Kind of like if let's say you're creating these DeFi or like assets, synthetic assets based on USDC or USDT, you're still a little bit dependent on the US bank and the Federal Reserve on allowing that asset to exist. But Terra really completely does this in decentralized way. And now that Dan had all these e-commerce connections in East Asia and Southeast Asia, we could see this as an adoption gateway for this to be in our daily lives, which they really made it happen. For the Xyz case, it was interesting because now that we were working with decentralized money, we wanted to see different adoption path. And for Terra, it was e-commerce, but we were looking for another kind of digital venue for adoption. We thought digital to offline would be too much of a hurdle, so we wanted to stay within digital. And gaming and esports is really the biggest and most vibrant and fast growing economy we notice in digital manner. And we decided that gaming will be the adoption gateway for crypto, especially in Asia, as we see so many avid esports and gaming fans and engagement and players. So we started looking for gaming investment, and we ended up launching Hash Labs, which was an acceleration program for that. And it was around the time where we only saw like Tron bats and like a EOS nights type of very speculative gambling, not really sustainable, high inflation games that made a lot of people money, but it was almost like a gambling. It wasn't really a community based engaging game. And I think a lot of the early founders that were coming into the gaming space in crypto were also opportunistic. So
Yeah.
we had a hard time just finding good founder in the space. And I think investing in game at this time in crypto was kind of taboo in a way, I think, because when we started this program investing in game, a lot of funds were staying away from it because of a reputation risk or just too hard to reference check on these founders. But through the program, we really got to meet good founders in Korea and across Asia, and the ones were XC, which we flew to Ho Chi Minh to meet and learn about what it's like to build this kind of game in Vietnam. And another one in the batch was a Sandbox, which is building Minecraft on blockchain. So we onboarded an advisor and then ended up leading their seed run. And then another game that we incubated in our office was League of Kingdoms, which is another P2E game on from Ethereum, and they recently raised from A16Z Crypto and Sequoia. So many of them have, took long time, but really, created their own ecosystem and made play to earn and, gaming as quite a big sector now in crypto.
Yeah, for sure. When you talk about, the banking ecosystem or the gaming ecosystem, when it comes to selecting the portfolio companies, do you guys do basically market planning or market mapping? So would it be more of identifying a sector first and then investing in the top companies in the sector? Or would it be, I encountered this great founder, he looks really prominent or she looks really prominent, and then you invest in the project, and then eventually you see the trends coming to a particular sector? Which way do you feel like you got are more aligned with like you guys approach at the Hash?
Yeah. For us, I think first thing is that we don't try to be smarter than the founders that we invest. Because I think in crypto, it just moves so fast. There's general direction, I think macro thesis, but what happens is just a bunch of different iterations and experiments to see, and also always challenge our thesis. So our overall stance is really being malleable and flexible about what we learn. But we want to be as much as data driven as possible by learning from different channels and sources, qualitative, quantitative data points to learn about, what is important and what are some of the gaps in the industry. So I would say we do kind of both kind of ecosystem mapping, but at like kind of more of a simple level where this is where our fund wants to go. But the actual investment that happen in that categories are very specific to that investment, I think. Because we always want to learn like what this founder is trying to do rather than how that fits into our kind of thesis in terms of the mapping. Because many times we noticed that pretty much most of our founders that invested in the space have pivoted in very different ways and multiple times. And I think what stays the same is really the founders, because markets change, prices change, and the thesis change, but the founders are the ones that really continue to grow and make this impact. So I think that's been somewhat of our focus so far.
When it comes to selecting good founders, what are some characteristics that you guys are looking for?
It's somewhat of, how like in Silicon Valley, people say like a founder product fit, or in that like this is a founder that's able to build this product. We look at a lot of this founder community fit, I think. In that this founder really fits into that community and the thesis and like the vision, because in Web2, I think building really awesome product and having sales help to make you successful, and the users would form kind of this centralized community as a consumer of that product. But I think in Web3, what's really different is these are users, but they're more of a contributor, participants, or even builders on your protocol, right? And I think it requires a lot more of heavy lifting around evangelizing your idea, why this matters, and empowering others in that what you built as a protocol, whatever oracle or like framework or a solution, allows other people to also build on top of you to introduce different add value, right? Which is what we call kind of composability within the Web3 space, where a lot of our portfolios working together in different stacks. So I think that's what we look at, and I think that kind of in that umbrella it includes how technical they are to solve that problem, but also their vision and the thesis around it. Does it appeal to the people that would contribute to the protocol down the line? Or is this community like emerging, or is it a little big community? How does this founder fit into that community? And how our fund can be part of that, as in are we already a big part of this community, or is this something that we're going to be pioneering together? I think we look at a lot of those aspects.
I think you brought up a really interesting point about founder community fit. Can you elaborate on that? I know that like Web3 is really highlighting the community component because of all the, DAOs or other fundamental different philosophy between Web2 and Web3 are community dominated. Can you elaborate more about what does that meant as a successful startup founder?
I think what really defines crypto industry is the community and how powerful that community is. Because the information flow is so fast in crypto space, and the innovation happen at the forefront level. Where I really think of and I think the most attractive part about crypto is that all the founders in each category, I think of them as like a PhD or like the professors, because in many of tech's industry, like I was, doing robotics, a lot of the research and innovation would happen at like a university research lab level. And the application of those research would happen at like startups or like Google, where like commercial products come out. But in crypto, every founder just launching new protocol or new mechanism are in form of like a research lab, right? Because they're the first
Mhm.
one trying that stuff. And I think, with that, what that means is that, you are really the lonely leader in pioneering that space and building partners along the way and community along the way, that this is the direction, this is like the North Star where we should be going, whether that's the tech framework, whether that's scaling solution, whether that's privacy, or whether this is like around gaming thesis. And if that founder has that kind of community fit, that this is the direction and this is a community, and how this is how we work together. And I think that's when we start seeing this kind of network effect forming around these projects. And that's something that we've seen with many of our successful portfolios, that they started as regular, humble, very smart founder, and they had different thesis and direction of the protocol. And as they became more focused, they started building this community of followers about like Terra's case, like decentralized money. What does that mean? Can we really create that one? A lot of skepticism, but also excitement, and that it just builds up.
Mhm.
X's case as well. It was very small community when we started working with them, on Discord, but people started realizing that this play to earn concept could really become very powerful. And we started seeing amazing growth and adoption of crypto in markets that we didn't expect. And I think that really made that community fit into the core IPs and mechanism of the game for XE as well.
When it comes to building a successful community, what are some actions these successful founders took? In Web2, a lot of people are just building a giant audience on Twitter, but does that equals to having a really active Discord group? Curious, like what are some, I guess, like secret sauce that like founders could kind of actively trying to do to make them more community friendly?
I think it really varies a lot, because I think the character of community varies in a way.
Mhm.
And what that also means is that the people's interests and the backgrounds of people vary a lot. So I think each founder has different style that makes it work for that category. For case of ZK Sync, which we invested in their seed round, after meeting him in meeting Alex in December, actually 3 years ago, I was hacking at the space, and he was next to me, and we were just talking as a more of a stranger, and he started talking to me about rollup, and I was like, what is rollup? I didn't really know about it, and he told me that there's ZK zero knowledge proof technology that he's trying to use this to scale Ethereum, or possibly have like privacy features in it with data availability. And and I started seeing that as like, oh wow, this is really interesting. This could actually become a solution. And but I was skeptical in that many of these ZK or like cryptography solution teams are like professors, right? Like PhDs, leading the lab and just doing a bunch of research to make this happen. And this guy Alex, coming from Berlin and Russia, was a small team with none of them being professor, but really executing fast to do research on their own. And I think they were kind of no community, just a support from Ethereum Foundation. But as they just became super strong and executing on their technology, introducing what they're working on, and evangelizing what is rollup and why this is important, and the way that they're solving this problem, why this is impactful and most practical, and why this can be applicable to many of the existing services to scale or become more innovative, because it cuts down on gas costs and allows them to innovate and iterate faster. And just that kind of technical fellowship started happening, which is very different than than like the followership and community of Axie Infinity. But ZK Sync's case, they made that founder community fit by very hands-on research, being very technical, and very focused on the product that they're working on, and providing solution for the founders that experience the current problem within the Ethereum. So I thought that was quite interesting, where initially I didn't see the team of ZK Sync as like a community person, but they really allowed that to happen down the line.
That's super interesting. I think you mentioned a really interesting fact, right? Like the founder you were talking about are being extremely technical, and it's really research led. Curious, since a lot of our listeners are like VCs or people working in tech that are in the non-technical position, like BD, sales, marketing, how should people like us, like non-technicals in tech, finding a place in Web3?
Yeah, and I think that's the best part about crypto, because whenever I go to community events and hang out with people, more than half of people I think is actually non-technical in crypto. Whereas in Silicon Valley, there's a bit of that kind of perspective where, oh, you're not technical, yeah, you're worth like less than engineering or something like that. But it's just serving different purpose. And I think a lot of times startup fail because of business reasons, not for the technology. So I'm more of a person where there's more weight to having better like community BD and like sales, especially for many of the software startups. And I think best way to really approach the space is being the power user. And I see many cases where I get like 4 to 5 messages every day from my friends and people that I met throughout my journey of life. And they all say that, hey, I'm exploring crypto space. I'm so excited about Web3. I'm fully on board. I believe in the vision. I'm trying to look for a job in the space. I'm trying to do something, or I'm trying to join this fund. Can you help me out? And the first question I usually ask is that, hey, so what kind of crypto apps or service do you use daily basis or weekly basis? And all of them usually, like 9 out of 10, they say Coinbase or like exchanges. So their perspective into the industry and as a user is still more about kind of speculative investing, which is good, I think, because this is like the first step to get into the red pill. But I think what I'm expecting more is really spending time, almost like wasting time, struggling with gas, struggling with like impermanent loss, or struggling using this decentralized exchanges, or this DeFi protocol where I'm always scared about getting liquidated, or playing this game that seem too simple compared to the games that I play like League. But curious why this is important, like being part of Discord community, to see what people are talking about, being part of DAO where what's happening, why are they so excited, why are they spending so much time. And I think I noticed that and I do this a lot too, in that like I think a lot of like smart people try to skip steps and try to find shortcut to become smarter, in a way that like they look for reports, they look for organized notes, they look for great like just analysis on like how to onboard, right? But I think crypto space is one of the space where it moves so fast that there's no textbook. And a lot of the pieces that come out are already outdated, right? So the best way is to really be part of that, continuous iteration. And only way to do it is, some might call it wasting time, just doing a lot of stuff that seem like, too much struggle, too much time figuring like one thing to work. But that really builds up and gives you muscle to really understand where crypto is today, because like it's not as shiny as it looks from that side, where there's a lot of hurdles still. And unless you understand that those caveats and the experience and how these things work at the personal experience level, it's really hard to form your own thesis, or even hard to understand where the gap is in the industry, or like where I fit, as in like I come from this background, I think I fit into this because the crypto industry lack in this field. So I always ask people to be user first and try to spend as much of time as possible to onboard and then start thinking about, forming your own thesis, or like start, looking for various opportunities.
I think this is super interesting, a lot to unpack here. One question is, when it comes to, as you mentioned, like joining these communities, like being a part of like the power user group, a big challenge for most people is like, because crypto is involved with a lot of money,
Yeah.
like every coin costs like a lot. Most of the successful major recognizable coins cost a lot of money, right? How do you prevent yourself from being like fish? Because recently, like we just face like this other news about OpenSea, 32 people got fished because of they were in a part of community. I mean, I just saw this on Twitter, so I'm not exactly confirmed like if this
Yeah.
is true yet, but there's a lot of community that involved with scams, right? Like how do people participate into the crypto community, but also be aware of, how do they protect themselves?
I fully agree, and I think that's the kind of limitation of this industry as a whole. But I think of trying crypto first time is very similar to kind of like going abroad to a
Mhm.
foreign country that you've never been, and you don't really know any norms or like the kind of social dynamics or cultural dynamics, where you're kind of observing and trying to figure out where, like, kind of like the hacks or like fishing, you go to a new country and like someone's trying to be really nice to you and like trying to take you out, like you're like wondering, like, is this person like actually friend, or like are they trying to sell me something, or like am I going to be dangerous? Like you go through a lot of this thinking, right? And I think, to a lot of people, I think crypto and like these Discord forums may look similar to that in a way, because these people are sending like airdrops, different links to click, you're always wondering like, is this safe? Is this like legit? And like you try to do your own due diligence, but it's very hard as someone that's just new to it. And I think that's why it kind of comes back again to being kind of power user, as in, trying to build up that muscle of, understanding the context and, how other, community work, rather than fully committing right away to the first thing you see. Just being power user and active in many different things, you see, different, variation and culture within different community. And that's, I think, how you develop becoming more like a seasoned traveler too, right? Because like you've been to different countries, and that kind of like interaction is usually sketchy, so you try to avoid. And you take safer options, and you take a little bit more risk when you become comfortable in that city. So I think it's very similar in that regard.
I love it. I really like this metaphor as a former international student myself. So I can totally relate to this. When it comes to like, knowing which part to participate, we have to consume some information first, right? So what is your content diet look like every day to, to invest in the top crypto company? Do you read the news, or like you said, like when it comes out as news, it's already too late? How do you discover the first like amount of, I guess, like discover some information before everybody else, as well as like how do you recognize if this is like a legit source to read? Because a lot of the crypto news, even for like podcasts or YouTube, we can see there's just so many paid ads about
Yeah.
random coins to buy or random NFT projects. How do you kind of source your information diet?
Yeah, and when I'm student, I go to teachers and like professors to learn, and I think of my founders as professors. So I always get that kind of information and learning from our founders, and I think this happens naturally by working very close with your founders, because I always prefer to have small and continuous and granular conversation about small to big problems, rather than waiting until something big agenda is there and then chatting, because crypto is very fast and a lot of different contexts change. So just having that small talk every day or every week with your founders allow you to get much broader context on what's happening in the industry as they accumulate. It allows me to kind of map out what's kind of the trend, what's the direction, and some of the technical aspects like I'm curious about. I would ask questions to those engineers that are building it. So trying to get information from the source of the people that are making those changes, and innovation has really allowed me to learn more about the current exact status of where we are and what should be focusing on. I think focusing on kind of Twitter and like the media gives you too much of a kind of FOMO, and also like feeling behind. I think
Mhm.
because in crypto there's so many things happening that there's no way anyone or any company can be up to date on everything. But having your focus and having your kind of close network of um, people to discuss this important topics helps a lot. And I think that's why some of these funds really try to create uh, 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 team of discussion partners. I think where like many of the times in like VCs, I think there's like one like a visionary and then try to invest through that thesis. But a lot of crypto funds internally, we challenge each other a lot. Like everyone has different view. We never agree on one thing
Mm.
altogether. But because we challenge each other so much internally, we are able to kind of gather all the data points and perspective around the issue that we're trying to, be more versed about. Yeah.
When it comes to like, chatting with the founders or like, speaking of like building up with the fund, you mentioned about like, traditional VC. And I'm
Mhm.
curious, like compared to traditional VC, what's the difference between crypto VC versus the traditional one? And since you guys recently, like 3 months ago, raised like $200 million fund, what have changed since then? And what are some new strategy you guys are adopting into this new change?
Yeah, definitely. I think crypto industry is really pushing the bar on how investors work with the founders, because the way that investors interact with the like especially protocols is very different than interacting with equity companies, because there's so much you can do to participate. I think if I'm like angel investor or like VC investing into equity company, you're not necessarily employee of the company, so you're not really seeing their slack, or maybe sometimes when you're really close to the advisor, but you're not day to day in the meetings or anything. You're not necessarily like building together on code level, or you're not necessarily putting money into their like a neobank to help out on something. But I think crypto allows many opportunities for investors to be engaged in many different ways. And for us, not many people know, but how we started the fund was the 700K prop like GP capital, and that crypto vehicle has grown into now over 4 billion. And that's still without any LP, and it's just the GPs, me, Ryan, Simon, Ethan, and Sean, the team. So that allows us to have full capacity to decide on our own and move faster to participate in many of the networks that we invest in. And that started by running Validator. So, I used to work at AWS, and many of our team members are technical. We started running, validators in a easiest form we can, and then started optimizing. So we've been running like Terra's validator since the Genesis blog. Same thing with like Scale Network and many others. And then now that we have a full control of our capital, we start, working as kind of like a capital as a service, in that, our portfolios in DeFi, they launch a protocol, and, many times, like whether that's money markets or whatever, they need that buffer size of capital to come in to allow for user experience that would be reasonable for the newcomers. So we would commit anywhere from like 10 all the way to 200 million into these portfolios, so that we can kick off their TVL or like staking amount, so that they have that buffer to allow the product to flourish. Another aspect is building on top of the protocols that we built. So
Mhm.
earlier last year, we acquired 2 gaming studios from AAA gaming publishers in Asia. And we've grown that subsidiary into 80 people now. So it's
Mm.
called Unopen Studio. And these are mostly game engineers and designers and community developers. And we're working on several different projects, building games, metaverse, DAO tooling on top of our portfolios, like Ethereum, Terra, Polygon, and others. So founders love working with us because we're not just becoming a capital investor, but as our portfolios grow in different stage, they need liquidity, they need help on markets, and then they need like adoption, and they need adoption around like interactive media. Like the metaverse has been quite a big theme around a lot of layer ones and Web3 projects to seek adoption quickly. So we're using our know-how of incubating Xe and Sandbox into working on how we can create those ecosystems, or building like real estate projects on Sandbox. Right, Sandbox has a lot of land, but not much has happened yet in terms of like the actual games or like the museums or galleries that are building. We work from our studio to engage our engineers to build it together. So those have been kind of big part of it. And our LP fund that you mentioned, which we raised 320 million so far in the last 3 years. It started as kind of a main way for us to align our interests with the biggest partners we have, because it didn't make sense for us to have these corporations come into our a GP fund, but we wanted to have a vehicle where we can collaborate very closely and help and collaborate with our portfolios in our fund as well. What that means is that our current funds are 90% plus corporation LPs. We don't have any of endowment or family office or like a fund of funds. These are all builders and very focused. And our requirement of accepting them was they're working on something active in blockchain or crypto. So these include like Stripe or like Samsung, like Nexon, which is one of the biggest gaming company in Korea. And we have BTS, the boy band. So a lot of them are working on these crypto projects or like NFTs or entertainment angle very closely. And we're devising them working closely so that they work with our portfolios that are building these building blocks for them to utilize down the line as well.
Yeah, totally. It sounds like you guys are building a whole ecosystem to incubate more companies. I'm curious. So when it comes to building a lot of these supporting system among your portfolio companies, I guess is there any like KPIs? So for example, in 2 years, we're going to do another sandbox, or like, what are some, I guess, like benchmarks you use to evaluate if this is this is a great add-on service, or curious, like, how do you guys set up these goals as a fund?
Yeah, we don't necessarily say that we're gonna find another this because the crypto space is so different every year, I think, in a way. And I think the innovation happens so fast that it allows us to think about stuff that was not even possible to think about before. And crypto industry is also not alone, right? We are making a lot of progress in crypto, but a lot of different aspects in tech industry about like machine learning, VR, AR, or like hardware, like computes, and a lot of these things are kind of innovating together, and as a kind of composition of that all together allows us for new experiences, I think. And people's understanding level of crypto as the overall like world's understanding of crypto goes up, allows us for doing new user experience, I think, for a lot of our services too. So for us, we don't necessarily have like this KPI of like, hey, we're gonna find another one of these, but it's more about trying to be one of the most progressive better in the space where we see this as completely new primitive. It might not be realistic yet, but if we think this is a great founder that's going to be persistent to survive through and make this happen, and we have as a fund capacity and fit into that community to help out to make that happen, we would love to be part of that journey. So trying to be more on that kind of seeking what can be tried in a new way, rather than trying to use our lens that we use for a previous portfolio into the new ones, because I think that's what a lot of Web2 investors use for Web3, and that we found Stripe or we found Facebook. How can we find that in a crypto? But it's so different that it's hard to use that lens again. So I think in Web3, it's always about just trying to listen and not try to not have that kind of straight type or prejudice on this is gonna be big. Yeah.
So basically, you guys raise, as you mentioned, like 320 million funds. Traditional VC raised from these like endowment funds or family offices.
Yeah.
Curious, like in the crypto space, for example, endowment funds or any other type of LPs are like traditional LPs are interested in crypto, or were they more of early adapters in the crypto space? Because venture investing is already really high risk category, right? And then crypto investing is beyond the high risk category. So, but it's also high reward. But just curious, like how, like when it comes to like raising a fund, what are some like observations that you guys had in this journey?
I think there's a lot of demand for crypto fund managers at this stage of industry because there's only few people who have kind of worked through this industry that saw this cycles and have the network to really evaluate you know teams and ideas that come with no data, just like a paper, like Notion page.
Mhm.
And these like larger asset managers and like fund managers have to rely on those talent to get access to the industry. Obviously, there are some of these more sophisticated ones that try to come in as a strategist directly, but I think that's still the status today. But it's great to see there's so much demand to understand and be educated about what we can do and how this industry is going to grow. So I've seen many of other crypto funds have raised in before and like right now are getting investment from those folks where they come from traditional finance or endowments or pension backgrounds, trying to have exposure into crypto industry. But for us, at least until now, capital wasn't really a problem for our fund. It was really more about, having allies of, strategic friends that are already passionate about crypto and, have them as our friends to build together. Maybe we'll also open up for, our fund three down the line to, bigger asset managers. But for now, we've been really appreciating the fact that we have this close partner of builders really working closely with our portfolios.
When I was like reading who founded all these top companies, it seems like a lot of the funds are just all working together collaboratively for many projects together.
Yeah.
First of all, like what is a fund that beside Hashed is like one fund that you feel like you personally really like admire and in the space? And then the other part is you guys also work with Coinbase Ventures, Samsung Next, all these like corporate VCs. Curious, like what are some value each party is adding to this space?
Yeah, for sure. I think I actually don't like that so far. There has been so many overlap of portfolios among so many different funds. I think that's the case, especially for a lot of US funds, and that there is so many overlap of different portfolio. And I think that's mainly because many of the investing in the crypto space past 4 or 5 years has been around kind of macro thesis about this is going to be needed in crypto industry, whereas this is a problem we need to solve today because a lot of it is long-term investing, like layer one scaling, privacy, DeFi, money market. So these are all kind of big theses that many of funds overlap. But then I think we're starting to see kind of a evolution of more focused approach of different funds and different like new funds that just focus on DeFi, NFT, gaming, and all these funds are also becoming more specialized in certain areas. So I think the DNA of the funds are becoming a little bit more clear on like what they're good at and what how they behave and how they've been working with their portfolio founders. We try to really be different in that about 65% of our portfolios are in actually Asia. And we try to focus on, mass adoption to happen in many of these regions, especially in Southeast Asia and India. And I noticed that many of the crypto funds are also investing in those areas, but they're not necessarily cultivating new founders coming to the space, helping them from 0 to 1, because they don't really just have local knowledge or access to help out those founders. Because I think crypto funds can be very smart, on token economics or many different areas, but we're entering a space where it's not just about crypto, but you got to really understand about what market these funders are coming in, what demographic this will be serving, and what kind of community this will be building. And these are all human things, not so much about tech. And I think we need to be present in those markets where right now a lot of the funds are going to like Puerto Rico, like in Miami, all that. We are trying to go reverse and then try to be present. And we just built the Bangalore office with 4 people present locally. We're expanding our Singapore office to address Southeast Asia with 3 people being based there. Obviously, Seoul is our our starting office with many of the team members being based there. And then we have US with SF in New York, where many of our team are meeting with the founders regularly to help out in a local manner by understanding how US market is going and helping them in a local manner. So that's why we try to really do where just be there and work with them, and that's how we did with Terra, with Axie in many cases, and do more. Yeah.
So we'll have just like one quick fire round
Yeah.
for you. So first of all, what's your favorite book or favorite information diet? Like I know that you just mentioned you don't like information diet, you like to be a power user, but what is something that you constantly, I guess, read?
To be honest, I haven't really read like a long books recently. I think I've been just like reading all these, crypto papers and updates and just being enjoying. And because like I think a lot of like small notes and like memos by people really inspire me a lot, because crypto touches on so many aspects of our lives and industry, and that I just love reading about how people are approaching the space in their own domain expertise, whether that's like fashion, policy, or like climate, or gaming. And that's been really a lot of like reading that I've been doing. But I love reading a lot of like kind of mystery books, like Sherlock Holmes. I've read that like multiple times. And like another one is like I don't know what it's in English, but it's like a Chinese like a comic book for a long time, like Three Kingdoms. I don't know if that I
Oh
read it in
yeah.
I read it in Korean, so I don't know what's that in like Chinese or English, but it's all about kind of the dynamic change of Chinese, countries and like the military generals fighting, and all about like this strategy. Yeah, I just loved
Yeah,
it. I read it.
Sangguo.
Yeah, Sanggo. Yeah, Sangokji. I don't know.
Yeah, Sangguo
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So Samgukji is the way I read it in Korean, but I just loved it because it just touches so many things around strategy, management, gaming, and yeah, I read it like at least like 20 times. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. And I'm curious, who made the biggest impact in your career?
I think I was very fortunate enough to have many different friends and like mentor along the way. But I think the first person was Rafael, who was my mentor in college, who was working full time in startup world while doing full time at Carnegie Mellon, studying CS and robotics. So that kind of ethic and like the exposure into Silicon Valley and startup really allowed me to think more broader about opportunities. And then I think Simon, who's currently working with me at Hash about all the things crypto, and he was really the visionary around defining what crypto industry will be, and allowing this Hash to happen, to build a team together, to start working on many of the different projects together. Yeah. So yeah, I'll say those two.
Mhm. Nice. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
From those two, or like is in like just
From
general
general. They can be
dinner
invited.
party? Yeah. I mean, I guess they can come, but
You're like, no.
yeah. Nowadays, I want to spend more time with my college and like high school friends. It's just that like being crypto, it's very much occupying a lot of my life. Whether that's calls or like travel, conferences, and I love outdoors and I love camping and all that. So maybe like dinner in like a national park camping lot, just barbecue with the old friends and just hanging out. Yeah.
When you first invested in crypto, what did your
Yeah.
parents tell you?
I didn't really tell them, but they were, I think, a bit confused because like they were, usual, very proud Asian dad and mom were like, oh, my dad, my son went to this school, my son's working. Do you know Amazon? He's working at Amazon. But now they're like, oh, my son works on like Bitcoin stuff. I don't know. But I mean, I've been in the industry now like 5 years, so it took them a long time to really gradually on board, but I think I share a lot of, stuff to them and like just like, overall news, and, they're becoming more and more like interested, and, they're seeing kind of the vision of what like crypto and like Web3 means. So yeah, I've been really appreciating their support along the way.
Where can we find you outside of work?
I play tennis every week, so tennis
Oh,
courts,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Well,
tennis. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Baek, for coming
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Grace. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. Have a wonderful day.